Mike Schumm has coached, consulted, and partnered with many of the top real estate teams in the industry, including many of our guests here on Real Estate Team OS. Two themes from that work: turning your job into a real business and turning around your business when it's unprofitable. Before he advised team leaders, Mike was a team leader himself, and before that, he started 10 small businesses. We've got a bit more exposition than normal here in this episode, so if you want to jump ahead 20 minutes straight to the advice and tips and things, you can do that, but you'll be missing a number of helpful and interesting stories and lessons. From there, you'll get 4 real estate team models with tips and cautions for each. The first place a team leader should look for missing profits. How to determine when you need a sales manager and when you can actually afford one. How to set and uphold standards so you can eliminate those low-producing agents who are actually costing you money. Mike shares real numbers, real ratios, real examples throughout. Here's Mike Schumm on Real Estate Team OS.
No matter where your business is today or where you want to take it, you'll get there faster and more profitably with an operating system. Welcome to Team OS, your guide to starting, growing, and optimizing a real estate team. Here's your host, Ethan Butte.
Mike, I am so glad to have you on Real Estate Team OS. It feels overdue. You've worked with so many of our guests on the show before. I'll just drop a couple of names: Kyle Whistle, Jill Biggs, Barry Jenkins, Treasure Davis, and so many others. With that, thank you and welcome to Real Estate Team OS, Mike.
Ethan, thank you so much. I remember when I think the first time I saw the show was at FubCon. Is that what you released?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, they put a lot of thought into this. Yeah, that whole back corner worked out. I saw some big names going in there. I'm like, oh, this is going to be not your average podcast. So I kept an eye, and then to your point, I'm watching the guests, and we have like 1 degree of separation from most of your guests. I'm like, wow, this is different. It's better. And then when you reached out to me, I was like, wow, I felt like, from a guy who struggled with imposter syndrome most of his career, I've gotten a lot better the last couple of years. I was like, wow, this is really cool that I get to be a guest with all those other amazing guests you've had on the show. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you for the kind words. Just a quick nod for folks watching and listening. What Mike's referring to, we did 21 episodes at FubCon in fall of 2023, and we really kicked off the show there in Q4 2023 with those. I personally feel like a number of them are criminally underviewed or underheard. So if you're relatively new to the show, like over the past 6 months or something, go back to the beginning. They're all marked FubCon, and there's some awesome guests in there. So anyway, thanks for that nod, Mike. So our standard opener on the show is, what is a must-have characteristic of a high-performing team?
I would tell you it's a different answer depending like what environment we're in, what market. Yeah, I would tell you that last year or two it would probably resolve, right? A lot of these teams, the model that they were using doesn't really work that much. So trying to figure out how to navigate the last couple of years, right? I have 2 types of clients, right? The ones that like, hey, we got this, there's more opportunity in a down market than an up market. And I've got the other half that are like, oh my gosh, we have no escrows. Oh my, and they're focusing way too close to the fire, right? I'm like, back up. Like, you got to look at the big picture. This is a small window in our career here. We have to just navigate this, do the best we can. Better days will come. So that would be probably the emotion right now. I've had a number of people leave the industry. It's just too hard. I'm beat up. I don't want to do this anymore. So that would be the characteristic right now.
You just drew a line that I'm always kind of curious about. I mean, you and I have both met and talked with people that feel like they can fight their way literally through any situation, no matter what. And then we also on the far other end, and I don't want to, I'm not obviously naming any names, I'm speaking to a concept in general, but like a little bit more of a kind of a victim mentality relative to the state of the market. And so what I'm drawing out here is some people like market literally doesn't matter to them and they're just going to plow and fight their way through. Other people feel like I can only be as good as the market allows me to be. Obviously, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, what have you seen kind of on either end? I mean, obviously, we want to bias toward kind of that front end, which is like make the best of every situation. That's what any of us can do every single day. But like, what is the reality in your observation about the market's control over what an organization or even an individual can do?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question, and it's really simple to answer. Is that there's 2 types of leaders. It's the one who focus on process versus the one who focus on outcome. So we were selling 20% less homes in the US the last couple of years, right? You're going to most likely be selling less homes. So if you're like, oh my gosh, we're selling less homes, right? But if you're committed to the process, right, and do that consistently, you will be fine. But the ones that kind of always looking at that number and it's not where it should be, or it's less than they hoped it would be, and they have an emotional reaction to it, get themselves into trouble very quickly.
Yeah. For context for folks, I'm going to ask you to do a run through as tight as you want on like how you arrived at where you are now. I mean, you spent maybe 12, 15 years as a practicing, agent and broker. You've coached in a variety of kind of formats and situations. Give us a run up on how you arrived at the point where you're now, coaching and working with a number of top teams and team leaders.
Yeah, it's I would have to tell you, an accident. This wasn't like on my big vision board business plan. I'm going to be a real estate coach, mentor type person. So, I'll go back a little bit, not to give you too much detail, but growing up wasn't great. When my dad left when I was 4, mom went on welfare. So the adolescence, the school years were just survival mode, quite honestly, right? Get through there. So then you graduate high school, you're like, all right, got my working papers, living in New York State. That means I could actually get paid, and do work. And I was like, what am I going to do? And with no money, college I went to for 1 month, I'll tell you, I was like, I was going to become a dentist. But never really realized that's going to cost a lot of money, like 8, 10 more years, debt. And I was like, I don't want to be poor for another 8 or 10 years. So my uncle said, hey, Mike, and back then, before Google and YouTube, Ethan, he was like, go to the library. They have books there. It's free. You can learn anything. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know any better. So this is it's strange, but I went to the library and I grabbed a book and it said, how to paint like a professional. I'm like, oh, so I read the book cover to cover. And what do? You start a painting company when you're 18, of course. And then I would come to your house and do a great job because I'm a perfectionist. And he'd be like, that's great, Mike. Do you know anyone that could update my kitchen or put in a window or door? And I would lie to you. He said, oh, I could help you with that, but I'm so busy. Can I come back in 3 weeks?
After I've read every book in the library.
That's it. I went to the library. I would go to a local contractor, or I would ask a lot of questions of people I knew in the industry. And yeah, I would come back. So I built a few companies in Long Island, pre-20, right around 20. Then I realized I just needed a change. And this is where I don't know, my life just happened by accident. But I said, this is smart thinking. Let's take all these tools, put them in my F-150 pickup truck, and drive 1,250 miles to Florida, where I have no friends, no business, no contacts. And I thought, I'll figure it out when I get there. Yeah. Now that I think about it, that was crazy. But when you burn the bridges, as you've heard that, that cliche statement so many times, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to eat. I have to make money. So I started 2 more companies because now I kind of knew how to build a small business. So a national cleaning franchise and then a property management for HOAs. I bought a house because living on welfare in welfare apartments, you're like, I never want to be a tenant, right? I'm going to buy a house. I don't want a landlord. So purchased the first house and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I rented out a little 2-bedroom, 1 bath, starting my investment portfolio. So I thought. And then a friend called from New York and said, my dad wants to sell a foreclosure, and he has a meat distribution company in Manhattan that he wants to sell because her brother wanted to become a New York City police officer. He wasn't into the whole getting up early with all this meat business stuff. So I said, tell him I'll buy both of them. If I get back in the truck and I literally drive nonstop, I remember 22 hours back to New York. And I built the meat business, and I loved it, right? The foreclosure, I rented that out. And then the meat business, I grew and I grew. It was just a passion. I will tell you 20 hours a day, right? But I loved it. And then I had a son in 1999, Ethan, which was awesome, except for I didn't see him, I don't think, his first year of life, because when you work 20 hours a day and you have a newborn, right, they're sleeping. So I said, this is not smart. If you bring someone into the world, and being like my dad left me, abandonment's a very tough emotion to deal with. So I was like, I'm going to be present. So I sell the business. And then you'll appreciate this part of the story. I go back to the library. I sold the meat business. What do? I got a book that says what I should do next is find something that I really love to do and find a way to make money doing it. And that's the best career or job in the world. So I'm like, all right, what do I like to do? So being poor and just being a workaholic, I only traveled 1 time. And that was, as soon as I made a few dollars, I went to the travel agent and said, I want to go take a trip, someplace warm. But I said, I know I can't sit on a beach chair, for 8 hours a day. I need activities.
Yeah, same.
So, yeah, right. So I was like, And I was like, she said, where do you want to go? I said, I don't know. That's my criteria. So she just happened to pick the island of Jamaica for whatever reason. And I went there and I was like, oh my gosh, these are the poorest people in the world, but the happiest people in the world at the same time. This is fascinating to me. And the food, like jerk chicken and conch soup and all this stuff, I was totally bought in. So I said, that's it, Ethan. I'm going to travel the world, learn about all cultures and people, make money doing it, and have it all figured out. So with my OCD, I memorize every airport code in the whole country. And then I get a job at the local retailer in the strip mall and the wholesaler to learn how to do tours overseas. And then now the former CEO of Zillow, who stepped down recently, invented the same exact product of Zillow, but for the travel industry in 1997.
Yeah, Expedia.
Yes, Expedia.com. So intuition, somehow I got lucky a couple of times. Intuition was like, wait a second, hotels aren't paying commissions, airlines aren't paying commissions. Maybe this isn't the best career that I thought it was. After reading the book, I was like, what else could I do? So at this point, I've started about 10 small businesses. And I realized, finished carpentry, painting, construction. I own a couple of houses, and they all kind of connected to real estate in some way. Then our good friend Gary Keller wrote MREA in 2003, the same year I got my license. So I saw the 7-level team. I was like, that's a small business. That's not real estate sales.
Yeah, I love how clearly and differently you saw it. I mean, it's the same book, but you're coming at it from a different angle than probably most folks who came, I'm a real estate agent, or I've got some version of a small early stage team. And I love that you came to MREA a different way than a lot of the folks who read it.
Yeah, and maybe it's an advantage now I realize for me, I really don't like the back end work, like admin, emails, like sitting in a chair in front of a computer screen. I'd be like, not my jam. So first day, I hire an assistant. I'm like, this is going to be, matter of fact, back then we had Top Producer on floppy disks. There was like 6 or 8, and you had to sit there all day, load them, wait for them to upload. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. So I hire an assistant day one, right? And I hire marketing shortly thereafter. And I'm working at Douglas Elliman, which is like this higher end luxury brand. And I start hiring buyer's agents. They're like, whoa, what are you doing? We have a girl at the front desk. We have a big marketing department at corporate. Like, why are you hiring these people? And they said, I'm just doing my thing. And they were like, you can't hire anyone else. They told me, like, we're kind of like not sure what you're doing. We're scared, I guess. I don't know. So they capped me, like, no more people can you hire. So I was like, all right, whatever. But I started figuring out the business. So now life punched me in the face again, though. A couple of years later, we'll say I had to get a divorce. So now I'm the parent of a lovely son, right? And I got to figure out how to raise him and run this real estate business. The challenge was I made a commitment to be present for my son when I brought him into the world. So real estate, they told me I have to work nights and weekends, right? It's, nights and weekends. I was like, how the hell am I going to do that, right? He was in, 3rd grade, I think, at the time, right? So I figured out how I can work 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon and put them on the bus, be home, and still sell 50 to 100 homes a year through systems and process on there. So that's what I was doing, and it was working out great. And then around 2014, Tom Ferry had recently left his dad's company, Mike Ferry, and he was getting his company up and running. And I forget how the paths crossed, but I got asked if I'd want to do some coaching. And I was like, same mantra, if you'll pay me, Tom, I'll do it. Like, I just want to make money and not be poor. I really don't care what the work is specifically. So I get coaching, and then they were like, hey, you want a client? Yeah, you have a client. They seem to like you. Here's another one. So all of a sudden, I'm quickly scaling to about 120 small teams, solo agents. That was kind of the thing. Teams weren't a thing yet. And they're starting to do pretty good. And I'm getting more and I'm getting more. And then I realized a lot of them are really good, smart salespeople, Ethan. But what they don't know, they haven't learned yet, is business acumen. I'm like, wow, that's all I've been doing for the last couple of decades on there. Let me teach you how to turn your job into a business. So the ones that appeal to started to form teams like the one I had built, right? Because I kind of knew how to do it. I've been practicing. So let me show you what I did. So I started turning their jobs into businesses, and then the real estate gods were in our corner at like 3% interest rates, right? Low interest, markets moving super fast, right? Flex had come out, right? So now we can scale teams, get agents in here, feed them quickly. So that this was around the time Tom had created his team department or right? So you could be on the solo side, or we had a team program, right? Depending small, medium, or large teams. So I was managing a good percentage of the larger teams, mega teams, I think they call them over there. And we started working and just, but I realize now I get a lot of accolades for some of those teams you mentioned and a lot more. But realize, Ethan, these were extremely smart people that were extremely hard workers. And I was just teaching them a little something to turn their business into a more profitable machine. So they started to scale. Right, they were going from a few hundred to come 1,000 units. I had 5 or 6 of them were probably close to $1 billion when I left them. I think 5 of my clients had made enough money to buy their own planes, and it was so you build a reputation, right? Yeah. When you're getting results like that with clients that you get fortunate to work with, and then life. I'll go back to my life. I realized when I heard Jim Rohn. I guess a story once. He was talking about the 4 seasons, about life and business. And the story says that no matter what we do, Ethan, in life and in business, you will go through 4 seasons, right? There's going to be winters, right? Tough times and those kind of things will definitely slow you down, maybe make you feel not so good. But what he reminds me of always, that what season always comes after winter? Always, for a million years, it's spring. Like, it's going to get better. So this has helped me a lot. I've gotten punched a bunch of times. So as I'm working with Tom, right, you can get your career going. My son, at the time, had moved to Maryland, was living with his girlfriend. And then I don't know how much you know about the pharmacy industry, the medical industry, the food industry in the U.S., but it's designed more to get you a little sick and then keep you in the system on pills like Prilosec and diabetes medicine, not cure you. So he had a sinus infection, nothing major. And all of a sudden he starts going to the doctors there, and there's like 1 pill, 2 pills, 10 pills, which caused him to develop insane brain fog, migraines like all day long, candida, GERD, severe respiratory problems. And then they eroded his sinuses, so he was bleeding out on a semi-regular basis there. Real bad stuff. So he called me. He's like, Dad, I think I'm going to die. Not figuratively. He's like, I can't get out of bed. I can't move. Every doctor in Baltimore says they don't know what's wrong with me. Can I come home? We were living in Vegas at this time. Can you help me? So me and Lisa were like, yeah, of course. And then when I came home, I saw how bad he was. I literally remember calling Tom on a Friday. Tom, I don't know if I retired, I quit. Like, what we have to do here, but I have to give 100% of my attention to my son. He was really, really sick. So that's what we did. So Lisa and I spent a year going to doctors, and then we exhausted all the doctors here, I'll tell you, in Vegas, and they said, we can't help you anymore. Dang. So then we learned about the Mayo Clinic in Arizona there, in Scottsdale and Phoenix. So we started going there. Now it's about a little over 2 years. I'm just happy to report we've kind of unwound all that stuff, and he's back in college, doing well. Good. From there. So that was a turn. But then as the time went by, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? So I started getting calls like, hey, do you want to coach me? And I wasn't sure. I'll be honest, Ethan, like I had about 30,000 calls there in about like an 8-year period. Like, it was a lot. Yeah. Getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, doing 18 Zoom calls every day for 8 years. So, but then I was approached by Brian Charlesworth, who runs Sisu. So he says, hey, what are you doing? I think you and my wife should get together, some synergy or something. I'm like, who's your wife? She's like, Spring Benson. I was like, I never heard of her. So she had a real estate team and some group coaching stuff on there. I was like you, Ethan? I was like, sure, I'll fly up and we'll meet. I'm always a yes. My wife drives me crazy. You always say yes to everybody. Like, yeah, sure, I'll be there. So meanwhile, we're in a wedding, actually. Here's the funny part, because the players. I was actually at the time at a wedding for Chris Van der Valk and her bride in Mexico. And she's like, wait, we're at a wedding. I'm like, yeah, we'll leave here. We'll fly to Utah. We'll go meet with them. And we literally, the 4 of us sat around the conference table just getting, because she didn't know me, actually. As much as we both had pretty good successes, we ran in completely different circles. So we got to know each other, and we're like, wow, yeah, there's a lot of good we could do out here. She had a lot of group coaching kind of companies where I specialize more in one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So maybe some of those clients might need some one-on-one coaching, and then my skill set and hers are complementary, but also different. So we started working together. So that was about 2 years ago. And now we're just helping kind of what I was doing, but more in a fractional CEO relationship is not looking to get that wide, or at least profits coaching is not looking to get that wide. It's really going deeper and helping clients and teams at a much deeper level, having few of them, but being way involved, whether it's helping with recruiting, ancillaries, trainings, like just whatever over 40 years now of building small businesses, my skill set's gotten fairly good from start to end. So I'll meet a new CEO. I'm like, all right, what are you really good at? What do you like to do? And let me fill your holes with what you're not good at, because I either know someone who could do that or I can do that myself. So it's a pretty fun relationship. I feel more like a partner than a coach or a mentor to them on there. So it was by accident, to answer your question, right? I was just selling houses. Someone asked me to help them with their company, make some coaching calls. And I realized that's where I belong, because when I had my real estate team, Ethan, I realized at a certain point, I got so much more excited when the agent brought in a listing, or I gave them a lead and they converted it and they were going to get a commission check. When I brought in a listing, I was like, all right, we got another listing. I wasn't nearly as excited. So that was my passion. I got excited when the clients did well, or we got them out of a tough situation. And it lights me up. It lights me up.
Quick promotional plug. Tom Ferry is one of our guests in those FubCon episodes that we talked about at the beginning. And Chris Vandervalk is the second episode in our Inside Whistle Realty series. He's the COO with Whistle Realty. I love that connection too, Mike. So kind of one of the first zones I wanted to hit with you is coaching, and whether we want to kind of call it coaching or consulting or fractional CEO. I'll make a couple observations and then feel free to pick it up. A good team leader is a good coach. Coaching is an important part of what they're doing. A good team leader in a rev share model has even more incentive to do it, maybe even outside of their direct team. Certainly, we've seen many agents and team leaders aspire to be coaches full time, and some of them, start doing it on the side a little bit, and then, try to go full time with it. So there's a lot of interest and aspiration. At some level, it is part of running a successful business. If that business is a real estate team, you've coached and guided people in a variety of different capacities. What are a few keys to coaching well in the seat of a team leader specifically?
Yeah. So in regards to that, when I have a lot of the teams that I coach, one of the first things they should do when they make a hire is we run a DISC profile on them, and then also the 5 love language quiz. Right. The first thing is to meet the agent in this case, right? Remember who you're coaching or mentoring, where they are, right? It's not about you and what you can do. It's first finding out where they are, right? And where they want to go. And then how can you get them there? So one of the things that has helped me tremendously with this is I've really mastered personality styles, like those 4 different, I'm going to just profile drivers, expressives, amiables, and analytics. And that's what I realized as a coach, where I maybe excel compared to some, because I have analytic clients. And know what they tell me, Ethan? Mike, why we like you so much? You're so analytic. We love you. You love spreadsheets and numbers, right? Then I have high expressive clients where we never talk about spreadsheets or numbers because they hurt their brains, right? And it's a totally different, more relationship driven conversation on there, like my drivers, right? I'm really short, I'm really direct. Like Spring, we get on a call, it's like 5 or 10 minutes, right? I got this, right? You do that. Okay, good, right? Talk to Mike. Need anything else? No, I'm good, right? And if you heard these calls, it's like almost comical how quickly and fast they're moving with no fluff and little relationship type conversation. So yeah, because team lead, I'll tell you, one of the things I coach most is if you know a DISC profile, right? You have your drivers here, which are primarily our team leads. Where they struggle the most, I will tell you, is they need administrative support, right? They need high SCs, right? To TCs, LCs, admin, executive assistants. These are polar opposite humans. The way they communicate, the way they look at the world, the way they think, right? This person lives in the future. This person lives in the present on here, right? This person wants all the details. This person wants none of the details. So yeah, one of the things, like whether it was one of my clients or I coach team leads, is right, how to meet in the middle. So when communication between these two is great, awesome. When it's not, this person's frustrated. This person's doing the wrong things at the wrong time, which frustrates this person more. And I think that's critical for a team leader, right? To master those skills, or a coach or a mentor, right? Learn how to calibrate yourself to come to that playing field where the potential coaching person is, agent, whatever, on there, right? And then find out where they want to go, because I've learned this too, as we set goals for these guys, like, hey, you could sell 30 houses, Ethan, but do you want to sell 30 houses? Right? You're capable, because I've learned, going back to Maslow's chart, right? When most humans meet their basic human needs, right, of shelter, water, housing, and all that, they take their foot off the gas. They're comfortable. Like, not everyone's a driver that wants to make millions of dollars. Like, hey, I want to spend more time with my family because I get all my bills paid and I have some money in the bank. I feel good on there. So understanding that, what's their version of a win? Not everybody needs to sell 100 houses and make millions to be happy and fulfill their dreams.
Yeah, really good. Okay. Practical tip for folks. Someone watching or listening may have like a different preferred thing. They might be an Enneagram person or something, but like, let's stay focused on DISC for a minute. If someone, they're familiar with DISC, they've taken it themselves, or maybe it's part of the hiring process inside their organization, but they haven't gone to that extra step of, okay, this is who I am. And now I know who my team members are, but now I'm going to take that extra step of educating myself about how this type can and should communicate with that type. I mean, I've certainly been through some of that. I am not a student of it, but where would you send folks? Is there like a book that you really like? Is there a system you like? Is there like, if someone wants to get good at that step, I'm just asking for a quick resource drive-by from your experience if they want to move more toward the way that you were describing yourself.
Yeah, definitely so. The company is called Wilson Learning. They have two amazing books that I would recommend here. One is the Social Styles Handbook, and the other one is called Versatile Selling. And the other thing, what we use, the company, I'll just give them a plug, is Intermex, which was the same format that Tony Robbins used to use and give out for free for years, but it's not free anymore, but same exact. What I would recommend if you're going to go this route is there's two types of reports. You have the DISC, and then you have DISC Plus, they call it, with values. Highly recommend the value report. I find is just as informative as the DISC information.
Cool. Really good. That stuff is linked up down below. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts or watching or listening in Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching or listening at realestateteamos.com, in all those spots, we write these up. I drop links down below. You can go connect with Mike. Certainly his Instagram profile will be down there among others, but so will all three of the things he just mentioned in that pass. I always take care to make sure that these things are brought to life. So don't miss the description down below. Okay, Mike, so you've seen, you mentioned at one point, small, medium, large, or mega team, and you're working with mega teams. But you also mentioned too, like teams weren't really a thing at this time. So you've really seen kind of the rise of teams from, it's not just a high performing agent with a part-time or full-time W-2 assistant alongside her or him, inside a brokerage that doesn't really understand what they're doing and is maybe getting, pushback like you got, to where we are today, where there are entire brokerages that are designed, frankly, to support the team model and encourage it, and everything in between. I'm sure there's still some folks that don't embrace it as much. But with that long setup, when you think about team as it is today in, mid 2025, what are the main types or categories of teams? When you think about team and you're trying to figure out someone you're talking to, okay, what situation are they in? I'm sure you've developed mental models or you've read or observed formal models of teams. How many kind of main categories of teams are there from your perspective, and what are they?
Yeah, so let's start. I had the privilege of working with a number of Sotheby's top 100 over the last year. Mm-hmm. The avatar is strikingly similar. Just coincidentally, they happen to all be females. I would say average age like around 60. So their teams in the luxury market, it's about them. They can hire listing agents and buyer's agents to go off leads to. So their team is relatively small, generally a showing agent and an assistant, right, with a top listing agent. I had the privilege of working with Marilyn Wright last year, and before I came, imagine no showing agent, no assistant, and she sold $108 million in real estate, like more than any other agent in the whole state of North, as by herself.
Yeah.
So of course I come in hey, what if we get a showing agent? We get you an assistant, right? Put some structure around this. So yeah, small. If you're a small luxury, in the luxury space, keep it small, right? It's about you, maybe a little bit of support or help, and you'll do just fine based on the price points there. You're not doing a lot of volume, so you don't need a lot of these back end support. So then what I find is also helpful is these smaller teams, right? Where you get just a couple, 3, 4, 5 people, high producing, right? A little bit of back end support. The team lead still sells in these models, right? I've got interesting, you'd mentioned different types of leaders. Some just love the art of the sale, right? They're always going to sell. I like to work with others and have a team, but man, selling is my thing on there. So that's where they tend, and then based on the name of the company, like profits, all my recommendations are based on how can we get the most profit to the bottom line. So in that model, that would be the way to do it. The next one are these mid-sized teams, and this is where
I'm sorry. Give me an approximate like agent count range in that model you just wrapped up on.
yeah, 4 to 6.
Okay.
4 to 6 on there because it's manageable. It's small enough. You don't need sales managers or trainers because you can kind of manage that on yourself.
You're still doing the onboarding yourself when you need to bring someone on or want to bring someone on.
No, actually. So going back to my philosophy, like I believe, like I told you, every business I've ever started, day one, the first thing to do is hire admin. Mm-hmm. Like that old saying stuck with me. I heard years ago, if you don't have an admin, you are an admin. I'm like, I don't want to be an admin ever, right? So I always recommend if they don't have one, hey, and this again where the company here is a little different. Like, oh, they're really busy, they don't have time. So Lisa, my wife who helps me run this thing, will run the ad on Indeed. She'll preview all the resumes. I will interview for you, and I'll say, Ethan, here are the 2 best candidates. Pick the one you like. I know you're busy, and I've done a lot of the legwork for you on there. But I believe everyone should have an admin if you're in this business, because there's so many things that takes up so much time, probably majority of the work. So no, I would have admin doing all the onboarding and all that, not to distract from sales. I want the least amount of distractions always from the sales team, whether it's team or agents. So then you get a little bit bigger, and this is the one where I see a lot of people, they're like, all right, I have 4 or 5, I'm going to get a little bit bigger, 8, 10, 12, right, in that mark. This is what a lot of time I call purgatory. My partner likes a little nicer term called the messy middle.
Yeah.
Because the resource.
I've also heard the black hole.
Yeah. And what it essentially is, Ethan, if you understand business terminology, I'm sure you do, this is the J curve, right? They're here and they want to get up here, but they have to go spend time, money, and resources and get through this thing. I made this joke accidentally, but I realized here's the truth of the matter. It's not a J curve for most of them. It's a skate park. They're like, oh my gosh, oh no, pull back, oh my gosh. And they're stuck down here, and it's painful. The reason why is the resources, the tech stack, the seats on the tech stack, maybe the sales manager they hired, their expenses are more than the revenue team dollar these agents are bringing in. So now this agent team lead starts to almost always get animosity. I'm working and selling houses to carry the team and pay the bills.
Yep.
If I fired them all, this is where a lot of them will retract from this.
I start getting resentful of the decision I made and the people that represent that decision.
Correct on there. So they got to make a decision, right? You've got to either decide to get probably a little bit bigger to get the team dollar to cover all your expenses, and then you can keep all the dollars you make selling on there, and then maybe an agent or two to make a profit on there. Interesting, where I spent most of my time is in the next, like I'd mentioned earlier, these bigger teams. Definitely a lot more careful to recommend that model to most in this environment. The reason why is the velocity of the market has slowed down so much is you would need a lot more agents to bring in the same amount of GCI, we'll say, that I used to bring in. To give you some real numbers, a team 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, first year, we can get them doing 10 to 12 units. Not bad, right? Just got out of real estate school. Year 2, we had most of them up somewhere to 20 to 24. When I look at my schedule across all of North America, most of the teams of that size are averaging no more than 0.7 units per month or 10 deals per year. That's their average. So the only other option is say that was 50 agents. If you want to get to where these teams are, you need 100 agents, which some teams have done, thinking that, we'll just bring in more agents, right? And we'll make more money. What most don't realize is as you get past a certain point of say 30, 40 agents, you still have generally a sales manager and a trainer. But now if you have 80 agents, you can literally spend half the amount of time with your agents. So they wind up all producing less because you just don't have the time or the resource to herd 80 cats with the same 2 people on there. So those models I've seen actually become a lot less profitable. I was working close to about 33% net profit margins a few years back, right? Now I see a lot of single digits. I see zeros. I've gotten calls from organizations as big as $1 billion who've literally made $0 in a year. Like that. So what I'd recommend there is like that's your model, and at least if you're not losing money, this is where we bring in a lot of ancillaries or spin off other businesses because we have an audience, we have a lot of stuff going here. How can we leverage this to make money other ways, through mortgage, title, escrow?
Yeah, if I can't make more money by doing more transactions, how do I make more money per transaction?
Yeah, correct. Because they're not. Because then you take inflation we've got, right? Agents are selling less. Lead fees have gone up over the last 3 years. So the challenge with the market sometimes is our industry is totally enamored with top numbers,
Totally.
right? There's units, GCI, and volume, right? But they're all on real trends, right? And they're all posting. They got great sales numbers and more units this year than last year. But you definitely could be losing money or making a lot less than last year or a couple of years ago today, even doing the same or maybe a little more units based on, your COGS number went up. I see that. Team leaders that have a hard time recruiting, what they do is to get their team to retain them, they offer them higher splits, not to leave to the other team who's offering the higher splits. And it totally messes up their model. And then they don't realize the extra 5 or 10% they offer the agent was their profit margin. It's now gone.
Yeah. So you've identified cost of goods sold and the idea of, we designed the model this way, but we're now making exceptions to the model. And therefore, the integrity between our business model and our operating model is now broken a little bit, or it's at least threatened and maybe, going down a slippery slope, because once your number one performer gets that concession, guess what the second and third performers are going to hear about and want for themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So besides that cost of goods sold and that agent split, what are a few other spots, and maybe focus on that second or third model, because I think that's most common, within our audience, more common certainly than the mega team, just because there are way more teams with 4 to 6 agents than, 58 to 258. But what are some other spots, whether it's, market driven and lower volume, or you want to maybe expand it out and say, all seasons, these are some of the main problems I see when the top line looks okay and feels okay, but at the end of the month, I'm like, where did it go? What are a couple other common threats to profit, in all those mid lines from the top line to the bottom, that maybe catch some of the folks you've worked with over the years, maybe by surprise?
Yeah. So great question, because most great salespeople are not analytics. Like knowing their numbers, like reading their P&L every month usually doesn't happen. So that's one of the first things when I reach out to them is like, what's your monthly percentage of profit goal on there? Most of them don't know, or they don't have one, which is shocking to me, but they're running a business, because what they mostly do before they get in my schedule is, all right, we're going to sell some houses. Okay, we're going to pay the brokerage fees. We're going to pay our lead fees. Okay, we have some money coming back to the team. Great. We got to pay the agents their cut. Then we've got salaries. Then we got marketing. Then we have operations. And they hope something's left. The next number would be their profit, and it's not. So what I'll tell you, the thing I've done most, actually, I was thinking about the call today with you, or the podcast, Ethan, and I was thinking, what have I done mostly? I would say in the last year, I'd call it more business turnarounds. Like they come to me and I look at what they have, and it's just, you can't fix it. We've got to kind of take this down to the ground and rebuild it, because they're spending too much. They have, a couple of years back, they were doing really well. We had mentioned, right? They were making a lot of money. They bought investment homes. They saved some money. But my guess is because they're not business, have strong business acumen, they didn't go to business school. What I've seen a lot of over the last couple of years is the savings has gone. They've sold the investment properties. I've had 2 or 3 call me. They've sold their primary residence to start renting, just to keep the business alive, if you will, on there. And now they're at a point, they call me, I have no money. What do I do? Right? The business isn't making money. So we essentially tear it down, I will tell you, right? And let's build something that makes profit in this market. So the first question I asked them is, what do you want your profit target to be? And I say, great. Then I look at their sales over the last, 3, 6, 12 months. You're averaging X. Then I tell them, right, then we work on the COGS, right? So on teams, if you probably heard this a bunch of times, you have to keep your COGS number between 40 and 50% max. As soon as you start going over 50%, the expenses you need to bring on to support the team will wipe out profit. So we spend a lot of time, different ways to do that on there. And then what I tell them is, instead of saying you can just spend money, here's your budget. You told me you wanted this profit. We've paid the brokerage, right? And that we know how much revenue you bring in. That's not going to change much in the near future. You're only allowed to spend this much money. It's almost like profits first, that philosophy.
Yeah, totally.
On that, just for real estate. This is what we do. And I force them on a budget. They can't spend more. Well, we need this. Or you can't afford it. It's either you have that and you don't put food on the table, or you don't pay the credit card off as much. Which would you prefer? And it's tough because they're used to having these things. They like having things. They like having the tech stack. They like having all the marketing. And they like having people around, salaries. But if you can't afford them, they got to go. And they need me sometimes to kind of push that issue a little bit.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like a little bit of an accountability play. I mean, once you have the identification of the situation, you now get into the role of, accountability partner for,
Right.
we said we weren't going to spend in this category, but I see it. Why?
Yeah.
Do you think it's just human nature that people allow these things to go, and then essentially when the tide goes out, and by that I mean, when transaction volume nationwide and, on average in almost every single market, if not every single market, is cut by a dramatic slice, we all of a sudden see where these things are.
Mm-hmm.
And then when times get good, it's human nature to reinstall things because, hey, we feel good. It's the roaring 20s again.
Yeah, you just touched on a quote I love from Warren Buffett about the environment we're in. Warren says, you'll always learn who's swimming with their shorts off when the tide goes out.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're learning real trends or they're how good they are, but now they don't have any money and they're trying to merge with another brokerage or team or do things to stay alive. I think there's two factors here. One for sure, just understanding the cohort of especially the bigger teams and maybe some of the middle, is ego. Right? They like having the big giant team, impressive office, and the vans that are all wrapped around town, and the billboards, and the radio and television ads. Right? Even though they might can afford them, it's hard to put that stuff away when you're used to getting all the likes and the admiration and all of that stuff. And number two is just general human nature is change. Right? We don't like change. We've been doing it this way, and now that was like the demise of Blockbuster and stuff like that, right? We're not going to change. This is who we are. This is what we do on there, and then that'll be the same with real estate teams that realize it's a different environment. There's a lot less homes. Interest rates are higher. Affordability, right? All that stuff. Well, if you don't change, it'll be a demise, just like Blockbuster for a lot of these. And I see it. I get calls where they're underwater, and I don't know how much longer they can hang on.
I've got a couple kind of common topic zones that come up a lot that you've already alluded to directly or indirectly in this conversation that I'd love to get your input on. One of them is sales manager. So, so you mentioned okay, if we double agent count in order to get the GCI we need to make the rest of the model work, we're now expecting, a variety of positions, including sales manager, now cover twice as many agents, and therefore they're not going to do as well as they could. At the same time, at the lower end, obviously if you're at 4 to 6 agents and you don't really like holding agents accountable or coaching agents or training agents up, that's something you maybe want to look to add, but what's the window? What is maybe a agent to sales manager ratio that you've seen work in general? Or is that even the right metric to know that, sales manager is a good thing? I think I've identified one thing that's true. If that's not a strength area and that doesn't bring you to life and you'd rather be, doing a lot more production, that would be a good job maybe to outsource. But when does it make sense? And by outsource, I just mean you aren't doing it anymore. When does it make sense to bring that person in? And maybe when does it make sense to start splitting off, whether it's in a pod type structure with a mentor instead of a sales manager? But what's the agent to sales manager ratio? When does it start? When do you need a second one or something?
Yeah, great question. Let me back up one step before that, just to explain when it comes to sales managers and ops. I would tell you there's two types of people you could hire. There's the manager by title, or there's a leader. So sales manager or sales leader. What's the difference?
Yeah, I love splitting manager and leader. Well done. Go on. Sorry.
The analogy I use often is the manager is the same person who's going to manage McDonald's today. He's going to go in and make sure the person working the fry machine runs the system Ray Kroc created many years ago to a T, right? Put the fries down. When they beep, you take them out. If no one buys them in 10 minutes, you rinse and repeat. That manager is not improving French fries at McDonald's today, nor the Big Mac, right? He's just executing the system as perfectly as you can. Leaders are way different. The leaders come in and they see things and they have ideas. They're looking at ways to make better. They're living in the future, not just executing the plan that the team leader created. So first you got to determine, who do you want or need, right? Do you have a great dialed-in system? Someone could come in and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. Great. Or is it you need someone to develop the system for you and help you grow it because you just don't want to do it, or you don't want to, that's not your jam on there. General rule, I'll tell you, this is 2x the cost of this.
Probably through fixed and variable comp, because that person who's going to help you grow wants a slice of that growth.
Yeah, I like that's a great way to incentivize them to grow the companies. Yeah, they get a percentage of growth, either quarter over quarter or year over year of previous on there. So yeah, so the number. So now you got to determine, right, which one of those. So here's where they start getting in trouble, because these people are not cheap. Does the agent team currently make enough money to cover the salary? But I will share in business, please write, if you can write anything down, is as a team leader, I believe the most important thing you need to do is to mitigate risk. The riskiest thing you are responsible for as a leader is to deploy capital. You have very limited capital. And if you don't get a return on your capital, you soon can get yourself into big trouble. So I tell my teams, if we spend $1, you have to prove to me how that will turn into $3. So it's not a matter of just maybe covering the salary. How will they grow your sales team to actually justify another, say if it's $50,000, $150,000 in additional revenue from the team? Because if they can't do that, you're going to wind up going in the red a lot. If you're just getting by, you're going to have a slow month or stuff like that. So to answer the size question, I find somewhere around 8 to 10 is where these numbers start to make sense, where at least these 8 agents are bringing in enough team dollar to cover the expense. And then this person could help you bring in a few more. I'll give you a number, actually. This varies across the country a little bit. On average, the average agent producing, so here's another thing I'll tell you. You ask the team leaders, how big is your team? How big is your team? I got 40, 60, 80. Then I ask them, how many are effective agents? Like they've actually sold a house in the last 6 months or so. That number is a lot smaller in the last couple of years on there. So yeah, effective agents, how many of those? As the average one that's actually selling and working full time brings in company dollar about $50,000 to the team. So simple math was, all right, we're breaking even now, but we want to make another $100,000 next year. Okay, we need to hire 2 agents that produce. And then it's a simple way to grow your profits that way. Each agent represents $50,000 if you can get them doing consistent work.
You just brought up kind of another thing that comes up from time to time. I'm thinking now of actually that Inside Whistle Realty series where I forget which team members, we interviewed 9 people in that series. I think it might have been Kyle and or some other folks. I think it was Kyle in that first episode where we talked about one of the most important decisions that they made recently, and frankly, their top producers love it, is that they have a process for eliminating those folks who aren't producing. And he set a minimum standard, and if you don't hit that standard on a rolling basis, we're going to see it coming. We're going to coach you up so you can maybe make the cut. But if you don't, you're out. How should, if someone says I have 42 agents or I have 18 agents, but, when you ask the follow-up question or when they ask it of themselves, that number really is, 65% of that. How should team leaders be thinking about eliminating folks from the team, which of course a lot of people are, I know I am very non-confrontational. So like it wouldn't be the most fun thing for me to have that conversation with like a pull up or get out kind of a scenario, like pull up your numbers and pull up your activities, or, it's going to be time for you to go. How are you advising people to set minimum standards inside their organization and actually enforce them with regard to agent production? Because at some point, there's a production level at which they're actually costing you money, even though it feels like they're free because they're only getting paid when they close business, but like kind of not really.
One of my favorite topics, Ethan. Thanks for asking.
Good.
So here's my little quote I would tell team leaders. I ask them, do you have standards? Most of them will say, oh yeah, we have standards. We set standards. I said, are you enforcing your standards? The answer is usually, well, not really.
Kinda,
yeah. So then I will come back. So what you're telling me is you're running a team with standards, but you're not enforcing them. So you're running your team on suggestions. How is that working for you? You can't run a team on suggestions because a standard is only a standard if it has a consequence. Mm-hmm. And to your point, A lot of people don't like firing people. And part of the reason is they don't like recruiting. So I realized, all right, at least I got the head count here. I know they're not doing anything, but at least I don't have to go out and do that job.
What good is the head count if it's not giving you what you think it should?
Yeah, so I went to actually, I went through Utah Life with Spring not that long ago, so I'm very familiar with this topic. So looking at, the cost of the agent, how much does it cost us, right, between tech and training and time? And matter of fact, I will share with you, that's the one metric when most team leaders factor in how much an agent costs, is they don't factor in the time that they take, the got-a-minute meetings, the one-on-one meetings. Like if you're paying your sales manager $100,000 a year and they're spending X amount of hours each week with that agent, that's money that's being spent. So we figured out this, I remember her number. If an agent's not doing at least 6 units per year, we're losing money. So we created a standard, right, where you have to do whatever, 1 or 2 units per quarter, every quarter. And then I learned this from Jason Mitchell, actually. He shared something with me that was like brilliant, but simple. He's like, Mike, I have a quarterly standard for everyone in my company. And if you don't hit the standard, he's like, I don't fire them. Because I do believe within a 3-month period, someone could get sick, they could have a personal issue, but we put them on notice that you need to get your numbers up to standard in the next quarter. Otherwise, we will fire you because we believe, or he said he believes that no one's having a bad half a year, right? That's too much time. So I think very fair, right? It kind of gives them plenty of time to get back on track if they want to keep their position on the team. But not firing them is one of my favorite topics. Is what you don't realize, you're worried about this person and they're not producing, and will they be mad at you if you fire them? But the huge, bigger detriment, Ethan, is everyone in your company is watching what you're doing. The person who they know is underperforming, they're not really selling. So they're like, oh, we don't have to do it. They don't really enforce these rules here. They said they would, but hey, if he's doing it or she's doing a little less, I'm going to do a little less because it seems okay to do that. To the contrary, imagine if your agent missed the standard one time and you're like, sorry, Ethan, you missed the standard. We love you, but we're going to miss you. Everyone on your team is like, oh, shit. So this team lead is not messing around. I like my job. I better show up. Otherwise, he'll let me go. So it's more important how your behaviors affect the people that will be here versus all the emotion, all the thought we put into letting the one person go. And I'll tell you the other reason. As I've learned, a high percentage of these humans are sheep, meaning agent body, but there's 1 or 2 strong personalities. So they're the ones, well, lack of a better phrase, get their panty in a bunch about something. They don't like you, Ethan. They don't like the splits. They don't like the leads or whatever, right? What I learned is they never come to you directly. These more powerful, they get a bunch of the sheep to buy in. Hey, you don't like this either, do you? You don't like to. So what has happened my whole career is now 5 or 6 people are going to come into your office, Ethan. Hey, we don't like this. And if you don't change it, we're all leaving today. And they will leave. So if you're listening, if I could give you a really good piece of advice, when you see that one problem challenge, it's law of the iceberg. You're seeing 10%, 90% of the problem you don't even know because they're talking to these agents every day, all day long. You speak with them once in a while. Is get rid of them quick. Trust me, you'll thank me later. It will preserve your culture. It'll keep things moving forward.
Yeah, really good. It's especially important too when you're in that zone where you don't quite have like a solid mid-level in the organization, but it's big enough that maybe you could. And so you're even more distant from, what's a little bit below that waterline, further below the waterline. Like that mid-level management layer can help identify some of that stuff sooner, but you might be like in that zone where I don't have that layer yet, but I'm also like kind of distant. Okay, Mike, I have a whole bunch more stuff that I would love to ask you. I always try to keep these under an hour. So I am absolutely going to have you back. I feel like we just, got to the tip of the iceberg on, sharing some of your wisdom for folks at different stages of growth because of all that you've seen and learned. And I love that you were able to share the diversity in your background of building businesses in a variety of industries. I appreciate the candid nature of doing that as well. And but before I let you go, I've got 3 pairs of closing questions that I think are kind of fun. I hope you do too. The first one, Mike, is what is your very favorite team to root for? Or what's the best team you've ever been a member of yourself?
Thanks for bringing this up. It's been a very painful year. So I've been following the New York Rangers for 50 years. So the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm a loyal fan, which one of the things that's a challenge is I moved to Las Vegas, on the West Coast actually, like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And they only come here once a year. I get to see one game a year when they play the Vegas Golden Knights. Yes, I'll still be a fan. Hopefully we'll get our act together next year. What was the second part? When is favorite team?
It's totally optional. You can do one or the other or both. But the other one is like favorite, best team you've ever been a member of yourself.
I'm going to say it's best, not because we were the best. It's where I learned a lot. So it was actually my track team in high school. Right? Growing up, I was really just trying to be invisible. I never had a dad, mentors or anything. And, Coach Irwin, I remember, right? He'd push me, hey, Schumm, right? You got this. Hey, we're counting on you. He'd let me try different types of, I was doing speed walking, short distance, long distance, right? And I started to realize I can do things. I could be someone. Hey, I could get a medal. I could win a race. It started to give me some confidence. So for me, that team is where I started to build a lot of my confidence. So to me, that was the best team I've ever been a part of.
I love that. And I love that Coach Irwin allowed you to see something in yourself that you didn't see, but he did. And like, we all need that in different ways and in different aspects of our lives. Really well done. What is one of your most frivolous purchases, Mike? Or what's a cheapskate habit you hold on to, even though you probably don't need to?
Well, I'm very frugal. So most of then you'll see why the purchase is kind of funny. So yeah, really, we live very simple. Like me and my wife, we eat like broiled chicken, brown rice, and broccoli like almost every night for dinner, right? We don't. But so the funny frivolous purchase is this story, is my wife has always loved Porsches, right? It's on the vision board. It's always been there. And it's up there, right? We're building businesses now. We weren't looking to shop or buy one. And then opportunities come across my desk because I help so many people. So about last September, me and Lisa laying in bed Saturday morning, I recall, and I pick up the phone and it's Brian Charlesworth. I'm like, hey, Brian.
As soon as you said Porsche and opportunities come along, I knew Brian was going to be in it. That's funny.
Right? And I'm like, hey, Brian, like me and Brian are friends, but we don't like call each other Saturday morning to shoot the, you know what. So I'm like, what's going on? And he's like all excited. Mike, you're not going to believe this. I was on an allocation for 3 years for the GT4 RS 2025, and there was a gentleman who was getting in a car, but a Lambo or something came up. He wanted that car, so they said, they'll sell me this car. I'm like, that's great, Brian. Congratulations. Like, why are you calling me?
Right.
He said, but I have a few others, and I want to sell one. And it was like the favorite Lisa car color that they had, Miami Blue, beautiful GT4, naturally aspirated, like just beautiful car. So I looked at Lisa and I'm like, you want a Porsche? She was like, really? I was like, just say yes. And they shipped it to the house. And but ironically, I haven't driven one of the things, who not how, I haven't driven hardly at all in the last 5 years. So it's more ironic that I bought a nice fancy sports car and I hardly ever drive. But it's sitting in my garage. We take it out once in a while and just have a little bit of fun. So yeah, that's as frivolous as I think. But I will share this. I will have a hard time buying a depreciating asset, but because these cars are what they are and they don't make them anymore, it's actually appreciated 4% last year. So frivolous, I guess, in a sense, but also not a bad investment.
Yeah, I'll take a 4% return on some portion of my diversified, investments. That's great. And the pleasure that it brings you. What does it look like for you, Mike? You're obviously a book reader, so that might be where we wind up here, but feel free to take it wherever you want. What does it look like for you to invest your time in resting, relaxing, and recharging, or investing your time in learning, growing, and developing? What are you doing when you're resting, or what are you doing when you're learning and growing?
I love this question because I mentioned earlier, I've read Good to Great a number of times in the last few months. So there's a chapter in there that says the most effective way to work is similar to an actor or an athlete. So what are football players doing right now? Resting, 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 resting. What will they do July, August, September? Practice, practice, practice. And then it's showtime, right? So I've been working on that, actually. It's like 8 to 4 or 5, right? It's just work, do these Zoom calls, provide value, and then turn it off. 5 o'clock, right? This stuff I could do. There's emails, there's work. Don't look at it. Same for weekends, right? So then when I read a book now, it's like maybe Saturday, I'll spend 4 or 5 hours. I will read the book instead of 10 pages every day. So it's chunking my activities into those 3 buckets of showtime, learning, practicing maybe, and then rest, and segregating them very hard. It's been super effective.
Awesome. Well done. I mentioned your Instagram profile. If someone spent an hour with us, I'm sure they might want to connect with you or learn more. Any other kind of websites or spots you would send people who want to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, you can go to profits.com if it's a little bit. Again, we don't market, we don't promote, right? Just based on the reputation and all the good that we do. The phone rings almost every day on there. So we're not here to sell or promote, but there's a website with some maybe basic information, or if you wanted to set up a call, I'm happy to help anyone answer a call, but it's profytz.com, because go to my frugality is that was like $1.99 URL versus profit spelt was like $50,000. Like, close enough.
Love it. Well, that's linked up right down below as promised, Mike. I appreciate you so much. I'm glad we could spend all this time together, and I wish you continued success.
Ethan, thank you much for the opportunity, and your audience for tuning in. Thank you again. Appreciate you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Team OS. Get quick insights all the time by checking out Real Estate Team OS on Instagram and on TikTok.